I want to talk to you tonight about the future of the conservative movement and about the future of the country. But of course, every future is rooted in some earlier past, or as Seneca supposedly said, every new beginning comes from some other beginning's end. And so let me begin in the year of our Lord 410, which was the year of an end. That was the year, you might recall, that the city once thought eternal, immutable, unconquerable, that capital of the ancient world, Rome, finally bowed to the invading Visigoths. And with that fell stroke, the age of the empire and the pagan world of antiquity came to a close. Yet in that end for Rome was a beginning indeed, our beginning, the beginning of the West. For even as Rome lay shattered and smoldering 1,000 miles away across the Tyrrhenian Sea, the Christian bishop of Hippo, a man named Augustine, took up his pen to describe a new age. His vision would inspire the West for millennia to come and help shape the destiny of this country. He called his work, his masterpiece, the City of God. Augustine's first ambition in that manuscript was to defend Christians from blame for Rome's fall. Some said that the Christian religion, with its new virtues like humility and service, with its glorification of common things like marriage and labor, with its praise for the poor in spirit, the common people, had made the empire soft, left it vulnerable to its enemies. Now, Augustine knew that just the opposite was true. The Christian religion was the only vital force left in Rome at the time of its collapse. And now Augustine imagined that religion rising from the ruins of the ancient world to forge a new one, a new and better civilization. And what would be the secret to this new order? Love. Love was a great word for Augustine. It contained the whole of his political science. Every person, he said, is defined by what he loves. Every society is driven by what it loves. A nation is, in fact, nothing other than, to quote Augustine, a multitude of rational creatures associated in a common agreement as to the things which they love. The trouble with Rome was they loved the wrong things. And as its affections became corrupted, the Roman Republic fell into disrepair. Rome began by loving glory and practicing self-sacrifice. They ended by loving pleasure and practicing every form of self-indulgence, and so Rome rotted from its core. But amid the Roman wreckage, Augustine envisaged a new civilization animated by better affections. Not the old Roman lusts for glory and honor, but the sturdier, stronger loves of the Bible, the love of wife and children, the love of labor, neighbor, and home, the love of God. And while Augustine said that all nations are constituted by what they love, his philosophizing actually described a new idea of the nation completely unknown to the ancient world, a new kind of nationalism, if you like, a Christian nationalism organized around Christian ideals, a nationalism driven not by conquest, but by common purpose, animated not by fear, but by common love. A nation made not for the rich or for the strong, but for the poor in spirit, for the common man. And his dream became our reality. 1,000 years after Augustine wrote, some 20,000 practicing Augustinians made their way to these shores to found a society here on his principles. History knows them as the Puritans. Inspired by the city of God, they founded the city on a hill. We are a nation forged from Augustine's vision, a nation defined by the dignity of the common man as given to us in the Christian religion, a nation held together by the homely affections articulated in the Christian faith, love for God, love for family, love for neighbor, home, and country. And I'm sure some will say now that I am calling America a Christian nation, and so I am. And some will say that I am advocating Christian nationalism, and so I do. My question is there any other kind worth having? The nationalism of ancient Rome led to bloodthirst and conquest. The old pagan tribalisms led to ethnic hatred. The empires of the East crushed the individual, and the blood and soil nativism of Europe in the last 2 centuries led to savagery and genocide. By contrast, Augustine's Christian nationalism has been the boast of the West. It has been our moral center, and it has supplied our most cherished ideals. Just think, those stern Puritans, our Augustinian forebears, gave us limited government and liberty of conscience and popular sovereignty. Because of our Christian and biblical heritage, we protect the liberty of all to worship according to conscience. Because of our Christian tradition, we welcome people of all races and ethnic backgrounds to a nation constituted by common loves. The truth is, Christian nationalism is not a threat to American democracy. Christian nationalism founded American democracy. And I just say this, it is the best form of democracy yet devised. It is the most just, the most free, the most humane, and the most praiseworthy. And my claim to you tonight is that we must recover the principles of our Christian political tradition now for the sake of our future. This is true whether you are a Christian or not, whether you are a person of a different faith or none at all. The Christian political tradition is our political tradition. It is the American political tradition. It is the greatest source of energy and ideas in our politics, and always has been. It has inspired conservatives and liberals, and reformers and activists and moralists and trade unionists down our history. And we need to hear from this grand tradition again. For the common loves that sustain our nation are fraying. And as they do, the nation itself risks coming apart. You know the litany of our ills as well as I do. You can read the signs of our times. Our streets are not safe, not least because our borders stand starkly and utterly open, and millions of illegal migrants pour into this country who have no interest in our common heritage and no commitment to our common ideals. Good, stable work is in too short supply. Our economy has entered a new and decadent gilded age where working class jobs disappear and working wages erode and working families and neighborhoods fall apart while the denizens of the upper class live a cloistered life behind gates and private security, and woke CEOs rake in millions of dollars in pay. Meanwhile, religion is hounded from the public square and fanatics take to our campus quadrangles to chant death to Israel, precisely because they despise the biblical tradition that links the nation of Israel to the American Republic. And at back of each of these trends, and all of them, at back of the chaos and coming apart, is an assault on our common loves, the affections that come to us from our biblical inheritance. God, work, neighborhood, home, the great affections of the West. They are dissolving before our eyes. And why? Well, not by happenstance. The modern left wants to destroy our common loves and replace them with others, to destroy our common bonds and replace them with another faith, to dissolve the nation and to remake it in their image. This has been their project for 50 years and more. But I submit to you, it is the right that is failing this country more acutely. The left's agenda we know, the left's threat we expect. Now, it is conservatives who should be defending this nation, who should be defending what makes us a nation. But instead, in this moment of crisis, they're busy tending the dying embers of neoliberalism. They're reading their copies of John Stuart Mill and Ayn Rand. They're still talking about fusionism and its three-legged stool. For conservatives, for the country, that will no longer do. In this hour of chaos and crisis, conservatives' only hope, and the hope of this nation, is to recover the Christian tradition on which this nation subsists. Our only hope is to renew our common loves. Now we need not the ideology of Rand or Mill or Milton Friedman, but the insight of Augustine. For the future, to save this country, this must be our mission, to defend the common loves that unite the country, defend the loves that make us a country, defend the common man's work, the common man's home, the common man's religion. Now, let me just say this. I fear that my fellow Republicans labor under a certain misunderstanding. The left's strategy, their overriding aim, is not simply to slow our economy with more regulations. It is not merely to grow big government bigger. Concentration is only part of their program. The left's primary purpose is to attack our spiritual unity, our common loves. They want to destroy the affections that link us one to another and substitute a set of altogether different ideals. The left preaches its own gospel, a creed of intersectionality, of deliverance from tradition, from family, from biological sex, and of course from God. They regard the faith of our fathers as a fetter to be broken. They deem our common moral inheritance as cause for repentance. Instead of Christmas, they want Pride Month. Instead of prayer in schools, they venerate the trans flag. Diversity, equity, and inclusion are their watchwords, their new Holy Trinity. And they expect their preachments to be obeyed. They may speak of tolerance, but they practice fundamentalism. Those who resist are called deplorable. Those who question are labeled threats to democracy. And this is why progressives, I submit to you, have such little patience these days for working people. They're too attached to the old ways, to the old faith of God and family, home and nation. Now, this is the left's true replacement theory, their true replacement agenda, to replace the Christian ideals on which this nation was founded and to silence those Americans who dare still stand by them. Sadly, the Republican Party of the last 30 years has been in no position to resist the onslaught. Instead of defending the affections that bind us one to another, Republicans of the Bush-Romney era have championed libertarian economics and corporate concerns. Their fusionist faith has become one note: money first, people last. In the name of the market, these Republicans cheerleaded for corporate tax cuts and low barriers for corporate trade, then watch those same corporations ship American jobs overseas and use the profits to hire DEI experts. In the name of capitalism, these Republicans sang the praises of global integration while Wall Street bet against American industry and bought up single-family homes so that after the banks took the working man's job, he wouldn't be able to afford a house for his family to live in. And then Wall Street crashed that global economy multiple times and the housing market. And these same Republicans kept right on rhapsodizing and subsidizing. It was all just too big to fail. These Republicans forget that economics is first and last about people and the things they love, about providing for family, about personal independence, about having a place to call home and a job that gives you pride. You could put it like this: the free market is valuable exactly to the degree it sustains the things we love together. Otherwise, it's just cold profit. And somewhere along the line, Republicans fell in love with profit at any price. And they seem almost embarrassed that their most committed and reliable voters are people of faith. Let's be honest, in that three-legged stool of yesteryear with the religious conservatives, national security hawks, libertarians, it was always the religious people who supplied the votes. And it was our shared religious tradition that supplied conservatives the most compelling ideas like constitutional government or individual liberty or the rights of workers. Still today, church-going Americans who are married and raising children, whether white or Hispanic or black or Asian or whatever, are the backbone of the Republican Party. If Republicans are going to have a future, that future lies with them. And these are exactly the people the party takes most for granted and serves least well. Give the left this: at least they know people make politics. I mean, they reward their people. Witness the trans flag on every federal building and a sluice of federal money flowing to every climate change boondoggle you can think of. But Republicans? Oh, Republicans give their voters this Hobson's choice between the high tax, high regulation globalism of the left or the slightly lower tax, lower regulation globalism of the right. Between the aggressive social liberalism of the left or the accommodating social liberalism of the right. Even as we speak, Republicans are threatening to drop from their platform the party's longtime commitments to life and marriage. And then they wonder why they have managed to win the popular vote only twice in the last 9 presidential elections. Republicans need a place to stand. They need a future to offer the country. And for conservatives who want to save this republic, there's only one place worth standing, and there's only one vision worth propounding. It is the Christian tradition of nationalism that unites this country. Work, family, God. These are the great loves that define America. And these are the ideals the Republican Party must now defend. Republicans can start by defending the common man's work. In the choice between capital and labor, between money and people, it's time for Republicans to get back to their roots and start prioritizing the working man. The recent Republican Party, the 1990s party, privileged the money crowd in just about every way possible, in policy, in the tax code, in praise. Think of all that worshipful talk about corporate tax cuts. Think of all that rhetoric about the efficient allocation of resources, which really just means profits for Wall Street. Workers, meanwhile, were left to fend for themselves, to watch their factories shut down, to watch their wages flatline, to watch their mortgages soar and their home values plunge, to explain to their children why they had to move out of the home they grew up in, why they couldn't go to the doctor because daddy couldn't find work. And to all of this, Republicans said, well, it's the nature of things. I would simply point out that has not been the nationalist or Christian tradition of this country. Abraham Lincoln said it best when he said, capital is only the fruit of labor. Labor is superior to capital and deserves much the higher consideration. Theodore Roosevelt spoke for the same tradition when he said, I'm for business, yes, but I am for manhood first and business as an adjunct to manhood. That's the spirit we need. The Republican Party of tomorrow, a party that can unite the nation, must put people before money. And the way to do that is to prioritize the interests of the working person. The greatest economic challenge of our time is not the debt or the deficit or even the value of the dollar. It is the astounding number of able-bodied men who are without good work. To get them that work, we need policy change. Look, we're about to have a big debate about extending tax cuts. Maybe we should start with this question. Why should labor ever be taxed more than capital? They should not be. Why should families get less tax relief than corporations? Families should always be first. And we haven't heard the word usury in a few centuries, but it's certainly occupied a lot of Christian thinkers over the years, and it should occupy us again today. There is no reason why credit card companies or the banks behind them should be charging working people 30 and 40% interest. It is outrageous. No profit margin in the world justifies that kind of extortion. No amount of money excuses profiting off other people's pain. We ought to cap credit card interest rates by law. And it's time Republicans embrace unions. The trade unions of the working man are absolutely vital to the future of the working man in this country. I'm not talking about public sector unions. I mean the unions that go to bat for the working guy and his family. I've been on the picket line with the Teamsters. I voted to help them unionize Amazon. I supported the railway strike and the auto worker strike, and I am proud of it. And when it comes to woke corporations, I'll just say this. If you want to change the priorities of corporate America, make the suits in the C-suite responsible again to an American workforce. If you prioritize labor, you will change the priorities of capital. But maybe one reason why Republicans in recent years have not put the working man first is they haven't been willing to put the working man's family first. A party of a Christian nation has to defend the family. Republicans have talked about the family. I'll give you that. Oh, there's been talk aplenty. But Bush-type Republicans have rarely paused to ask themselves why so few of their countrymen are actually forming families. You know, happy and hopeful people have children, yet fewer and fewer Americans do. Why is that? Could it be that the economy Republicans have championed, the globalist, corporatist economy they helped create, is actually bad for the family? Time was a working man could support his family, a wife and children, by the work of his own hands. You and I both know those days are long gone. These days, Americans toil away in dead-end jobs in cubicles, servicing the global corporations while paying outrageous sums for housing and health care. They don't have families because they can't afford to have the families they want. No wonder they're anxious. No wonder they're depressed. And those that do have children can't afford to be home with them. Today, two parents have to work to make the kind of money with the kind of purchasing power that one wage got you 50 years ago. So government daycare now shapes our children's worldview. Screens now teach our children self-worth or self-criticism. The media and advertising industries shape their sense of right and wrong. You want to put family first? Make it easy to have children and put mom and dad back in the home. Make it the policy of this country to get American workers a family wage, one that a man can support his family on. The kind of wage that allows a married couple to raise their children as they see fit, because the truest measure of American strength is the flourishing of American home and family. And conservatives must defend the common man's religion. Of all the affections that bind together a society, none is more powerful than religious affection, a shared vision of transcendent truth. Now, when our talking heads deign to acknowledge religion at all, what they usually say is religious liberty is what is most valuable. Religious liberty unites Americans. That's not strictly speaking true. Religion unites Americans, which is why the liberty to practice it is so important. Every great civilization has sprung from a great religion, and ours is no different. Despite experts telling Americans for decades that religion divides them, that religion destroys their civil peace, that religion is out of bounds, most Americans share broad and basic religious convictions: theistic, biblical, Christian. Our national faith is right there in the Declaration of Independence. All men are created equal and endowed by their Creator with inalienable rights. Our national faith is there on our currency. In God we trust. President Eisenhower summed it up well when he said about that motto back in 1954, "Here is the land of liberty, and the land that lives in respect of the Almighty's mercy to us." Now, the elite consensus on religion is exactly wrong. Religion is one of the great unifiers of American life, one of the great common affections. Working people believe in God, they read the Bible, they go to church, some often, some not, but they consider themselves in all events members of a Christian nation, and they understand this fundamental truth: their rights come from God, not from government. The 70-year push to eliminate every vestige of religious observance from our public life is precisely opposite what the nation needs. We need more civil religion, not less. We need open acknowledgement of the religious faith and the religious heritage that binds Americans one to another. The campaign to erase America's religion from the public square is really just class warfare by other means. It's the elite versus the common man. It's the atheistic moneyed class versus America's working people. And by the way, it's not really about eliminating religion. It's about replacing one religion with another. Every nation observes a civil religion. Every nation is a spiritual unity. The left wants religion. They want the religion of the pride flag. We want the religion of the Bible. So I have a suggestion, small suggestion. Why don't we take down the trans flag from all of the federal buildings over which it's flying around the world, and instead inscribe on every building owned or operated by the federal government our national motto: "In God we trust." Listen, symbols matter. Symbols matter. Most Americans, most everyday Americans, most working Americans find solidarity in faith. They believe that God has blessed America. They believe God has a purpose for America, and they want to be part of it. And that conviction is what gives them the sense that, as Burke wrote, the nation is a partnership between those who are living, those who are dead, and those who are yet to be born. Decades of misguided court rulings and elite propaganda have not erased Americans' religious convictions, not yet. And that's a prime reason we still have a nation. Conservatives must defend our national religion and its role in our national life. They must defend this most fundamental and ancient of moral bonds, as Macaulay put it, the ashes of our fathers and the temples of our God. Work, home, God. These are the things we love together, that sustain our common life together, that make us a nation and provide the ground of our unity. And this is what Christian nationalism means in the truest and deepest sense. Not every citizen of America is a Christian, obviously. Never has been, never will be. But every citizen is heir to the liberties, to the justice, to the common purpose our biblical and Christian tradition gives us. That tradition is why we believe in free speech. It's why we believe in freedom of conscience. It is why we deplore the virulent anti-Semitism on display in our supposedly elite institutions and campuses. Now, I do notice that some who call themselves Christian nationalists offer different counsel, a counsel of despair. There's a certain end of days flavor about some of their rhetoric. All is lost, they say. America cannot be saved or is not worth saving. And from that place of fear, they recommend fearful policies, an established church, ethnocentrism, a Protestant Franco. That is not the way. That is not our tradition. That is not what we believe. Let us not be controlled by fear. Let us not return to the harsh ethnic nationalism of the ancient world or to the authoritarian ideology of blood and soil. That's not what the Christian legacy has left us. Now, in this land, we defend the liberty of all. In this nation, we practice self-government of the people. Let us return instead to what joins us in common communion: the dignity of labor, the sanctity of the home, the love of family and of God. That's our civilization. That's America. And I would just say that those great loves in which our nation is founded have not failed. They are as compelling today as they were when Augustine wrote about them. They are as vibrant now as when the Puritans first set sail for these shores. We need only recommit ourselves to defending them, to strengthening them, to renewing our devotion. And when we do, we will save the nation. Thank you for having me. God bless you. Good night.